Welcome back, everybody, to Hoops HD. It is Monday, December 1st,
Woohoo.
2025, and it's time for our Hoops HD report. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up here by David Dorman and David Griggs, bottom row by John Salika and Joby Fortson. And first of all, guys, before we get to the games and all the like, happy Net Day. The net rankings are out along with the WAB rankings. Major updates to your J&G ratings. We got KPI ratings too. We'll get to all that stuff in a few minutes here. But Joby, I want to get your thoughts because you are our metrics guy and your J&G ratings are the number, not only the number one computer metric out there in predicting the committee, but as good as any human last year in predicting what the committee was going to do. So
And the
your thoughts on what
highest
you saw
average
today?
for the last 2 years of anyone,
Yeah.
You,
human or
you,
computer. Highest.
and your thoughts on what you saw today from net ratings that came out that are honestly completely meaningless because there's still not enough data for these
Right.
ratings to be worth much.
Yeah, I'll save a lot for my final thought, but what I
Mm.
noticed was a a disparity among not necessarily the Power Five. The Power Five ratings seem to correlate with where the J&G and others and kind of where the ratings they didn't surprise me. What surprised me was the after effects, both good and bad, for teams that didn't have like the consistent schedule or a consistent record against a bad schedule like a Power Five team might. It was really I saw swings from the baseline J&G uh, to the net. I saw swings of like 50 and 60, but almost none among the Power Five. It was almost exclusively to the mid major, the upper mid majors is where you saw some major swings. I'll talk about some in the show, but that's what was my main component is if you didn't consistently win against a poor schedule or play a tough schedule and just do well or adequate against it, it was your metrics are a lot more variable and will drop and fall a lot more over the next month until things start to settle as we get into conference play.
Yeah, and as we mentioned now, we have the net ratings out. Also, the NCAA's WAB or wins above bubble metric, which is basically how how well your team is compared to the average bubble team. It's similar to if anybody follows baseball, the WAR rating for wins above replacement players. But
Okay.
um,
Explain exactly how that works. Do they create like a ghost bubble team?
exactly, there's a
Yeah.
ghost bubble team, and the question is how many more wins you would have against your schedule versus that ghost bubble team against your same schedule, and how many more wins you're projected to have, and that gives you a raw number, and then everyone's raw number is rated 1 through 365 to get the best and the worst WAB team.
Okay.
Um,
I kind
in
of like
fact,
that concept.
let's go ahead and pull up the screen share here. I'm going to start things off tonight in the Big Ten, and you can now see the new columns here with the net, the WAB. Joby, your J&G ratings as you mentioned, were updated today to reflect the changes and with the net coming out. Uh, Kevin, who does the KPI ratings, he starts as soon as the net comes out his ratings. So they're on the screen. We've got a full screen of metrics here, all kinds of crazy numbers. But let's talk about some games. And
You'll
Dorman, I want to
notice
start
one
with
team, though, Chad, not to interrupt, one team that was not number one in most metrics after today is number one across the freaking board,
And
brother.
that's why I want to start. Other than the AP and the coaches poll, Dorman, I know you have some thoughts on them. What the Michigan Wolverines did this week out in Vegas,
God.
uh, demolishing three quality opponents.
I'm going better than quality. I think those are really. We'll put San Diego State aside for right now. I think Auburn and then Gonzaga were the three wins. They played as well in three games as I have seen any team in any tournament in the last 5 to 10 years. Gonzaga was playing fantastic basketball. They were coming in as hot as Michigan was, and Michigan just wiped them off the floor. They were up 20 at halftime. Michigan, and we're talking about a Michigan team here that's totally revamped. This is a new starting five, and the big men were not the big men last year. Remember, Golden and the other big guy are now in the NBA. This Michigan team is really impressive. What they did offensively, the way they moved without the ball and their shooting was on fire in Vegas. I don't think they missed a shot yet, but Michigan, yes, looks as good as anyone I've ever seen. 3 days, that was just beautiful basketball. And Michigan deserves all the accolades they're getting this week because they played fantastic.
Yeah, I guess maybe the one question is what's wrong with the BPI only having them a fifth in the nation? I mean, shame on them.
It's an awful metric. If you
Terrible.
rank the results, this is my one comment on the BPI. If you rank all of these metrics against the actual seed list at the end of the year, the BPI for the last 10 years since I've been doing this, of these major metrics, has finished dead last over and over and over again.
Okay. Yeah, Chad, if you can pull Michigan back up real quick. Like I think just to kind of piggyback on what Dorman said, they didn't get off to the most impressive start to the season. You know, they sweated out at TCU and then Wake Forest, two teams we thought they'd clobber. So, but like even in the games they struggled, those were hard games to win and they won them both. And then they just went out to I've never seen a team go from good to great so quickly.
And look at some of these numbers here. That they are shooting 51.8% and allowing 34.4%. That's an insane difference.
Yeah,
and they're the second best rebounding team in the nation. I mean,
yes, and they put those numbers up. They were not playing the bottom, teams outside the top 300 to rack up those kinds of stats. They were playing Gonzaga, Auburn, at TCU, who has since proven themselves to be pretty good. No, I know we're going to get to them, but they are definitely a team we're going to discuss. And I think Wake's good. They don't have any quality wins yet, but I think that they've shown that they're good enough to do it. And like the only team that they've played on there that's probably going to finish outside the top 50, 150 is none of them.
maybe maybe Middle Tennessee.
Maybe middle.
Maybe
What are they
middle.
doing? I know they're playing UAB right now.
We'll wait till San Diego State
they
starts
won.
playing the
They won.
conference games where they're playing everybody with a 200 net, and that'll maybe bring them down.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the standings here. Salika, let me bring you in. There's a lot of other stories we could hit in this conference. Maybe we should kind of go in the other direction, though. Another team that was out there in the Vegas tournament, Oregon, horrible week, 0-3.
Well, it was kind of a mixed bag for teams formerly in the Conference of Champions. Oregon, obviously not one of their better performances with the losses against Auburn and a San Diego State team that's been subpar, and also losing to Creighton, who's ran very hot and cold. Not a good showing for the Ducks, but on the other hand, if you're the USC Trojans, you actually won the tournament out in Maui with a couple of heartstoppers against Boise State and Seton Hall, and they also beat their good pals Arizona State for the championship game.
Yeah, so real good week for USC. Joby, Purdue here, cruising along. All they played was Eastern Illinois this week, though. But maybe a little discussion of this Indiana team who pounded Kansas State. Now, Kansas State, as we record this, is getting pounded at home by Bowling Green, so maybe that wasn't that good of a win. But the Hoosiers have looked pretty darn good so far, I think.
Yeah, Indiana. Well, we had Indiana, or at least in my preseason, I had Indiana starting around the 7-6. Their performances moved them up to around a 5. If they continue, I mean, they're undefeated against what is, in all honesty, a pretty light schedule. In that 339 strength of schedule is only going to get worse if Kansas State follows through and now is lost to Bowling Green. So maybe they've kind of taken advantage of their schedule, but I think just the same, they're winning in a solid fashion. This is probably a tournament team, but they haven't been tested fully just yet.
Dorman, I know you want to speak about two other teams here. Why don't we start with the Spartans? There's another team that had a real good week, including dominating what I thought was a pretty good North Carolina team.
I thought North Carolina was good too, and then I watched them on Thanksgiving get carved up by Sparty. Michigan State's playing great. They look great against North Carolina. Now, remember, previously in the In the Champions Classic, they knocked off Kentucky by 17. This week, they took down Carolina by 16. And interesting enough, everything they've done already this season, the resume's looking good. This week is might be their biggest week so far yet today. This week they start off the Big Ten season. They have Iowa at home tonight in Breslin, and then Saturday they bring in Duke. So Iowa and Duke both come into the Breslin Center this week. Sparty's playing fantastic ball. Those should be great games because I also think Iowa is fantastic. Ben McCollum's got him playing great, fantastic. He is an offensive genius. I'll let someone else speak about it. But yeah, Sparty playing really well.
Yeah, Griggs, how about that Iowa win over Ole Miss? That was their big win this week. They also beat Grand Canyon, but I
Yeah,
was
they
impressed with
did.
their Ole Miss game.
I really was too. Iowa, is that who you got up on the screen there? They
Yep.
kind of eased into their season a little bit. They're getting into the rip current tonight. Nothing easy about the night taking on Sparty, but I do think that they're pretty good.
That's tomorrow night. That's Tuesday
Excuse me,
night.
it's tomorrow night. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but what was I saying? Oh, but I do think that they were a good team, and the thing is to beat Ole Miss, a pretty solid Ole Miss team on a neutral floor and stay undefeated. That's pretty good. But we're going to learn a lot more about them this week.
We
And
are.
this schedule not necessarily their fault. SEMO's been kind of disappointing. I think we knew how bad Chicago State and Western Illinois were going to be, but Xavier and Grand Canyon, I'm sure when they scheduled those, they were expecting them to be better than what they've shown out so far.
Well, I got to admit the win against Xavier might be looking a little bit rosier for the Hawkeyes, but we'll get to
Yeah.
that later.
Yeah.
So
Xavier
Xavier
a
showed
lot
a
better.
little
Yeah.
bit of life, a little bit of life.
And Chad, I do want to point out one thing when you look at the conference here, just as a whole, as a table setter. Look at how many teams, eight, that are projected to be a 6 seed or better in the JNG. Eight. Then look how many are projected to make the field beyond that. 0. It's like a very top-heavy situation. I think teams like Northwestern and UCLA and Ohio State can move up into that conversation, especially with those 8 allowing for good opportunities. But it is a very curious dynamic that is.
Yeah, but we also got to see can teams like Washington and Oregon rebound as the season goes along. So
yeah.
there's some other stories there.
I don't know if
And
Washington will, but Oregon.
is Nebraska for real? Sitting here 8-0.
I think they are now.
I agree.
Have they lifted any super heavyweight? No, but they have lifted some medium weight. The win against Kansas State I thought was pretty good. It was in Kansas City. The win against Oklahoma, these are not tier 1 wins, and they may not even be top 40 wins, but those are certainly not home bye wins either. They've done some good. I like how they play. They've got another game tomorrow later this week against Creighton, a game they'll probably win. I think that I think they can make a run at the bubble.
Uh,
And I think when they get some people at home, they're not going to, I think they're going to knock off some heavyweights at home.
let's take a look at the upcoming schedule here. As you mentioned, it is big starting tomorrow night. First conference games of the season with Iowa, Michigan State, Purdue, Rutgers, USC, Oregon. We've also got Indiana, Minnesota, Northwestern, Wisconsin, UCLA, Washington coming up in conference. Huge Indiana Louisville game, non-conference on Saturday, and that Duke
Where's
Michigan
that
State
game being played? Just out of curiosity, Indiana and Louisville.
in
It's in
Indianapolis, I believe.
Indy.
Yeah,
And
it's going to be quite the place on Saturday because it's not just the basketball game. You've also got a little 1-2 game
you're
of
right.
another sport.
There will be Hoosiers in Indianapolis that day. I can guarantee you that.
Do the games overlap?
No, the basketball will go first during the day, right around noontime, I believe, and the football kicks off at night, about 7 local time there.
Wow, good.
Could be a huge day for Indiana fans or a bad day for Indiana fans.
Yeah.
I'm also noticing something else here. The Big Ten has teams 1-2 in the coaches poll in football and basketball now.
There you go.
How often has that happened?
I'd venture to say never.
Let's not
Maybe
forget
look to
this.
the SEC last year. That would be my first guess.
I've highlighted some of the key non-conference games here. Illinois, Tennessee, Griggs, also on Saturday. Another huge game involving this conference. Almost
Yeah,
forget
and
about Illinois. They've got 2 losses, but they're a damn good team too.
yeah, and they really are. They don't have the super quality wins on their resume yet, but that's a really good game. And how about that? Old Pac-12 rivals Oregon and UCLA. Marquette going to whiskey. Well, we'll talk about them later,
Yeah, Marquette. Well, let's go to
or
the
maybe we
SEC.
won't. Yeah,
Let's go.
maybe
Let's
we
go.
won't.
Let's go hit a little SEC. And Dorman, why don't I start with you? And I think you're with me, believers in this Vanderbilt team at this point.
Mark Byington, I'm all in. I'm buying in because he has a fantastic team. They are scoring points like I can't believe their offense. They move the ball so well. They shoot the ball at a high rate, but they just work the ball together. Their team just crisp, clean passing, and they find the open guy. And every time I watch Mark Byington's teams, I'm more and more impressed with them. They won St. Mary's, who I think is a really, really good team this year, a top 25 team this year. They crushed them. They ran them off the court. They beat them by 25 down there in that tournament. I believe it was in Florida somewhere. But
Is that Fort Myers?
I
yeah,
thought that
maybe
was
it
it.
was
Was
Florida.
that Atlantis or no?
Maybe in Atlantis.
It might have been Atlanta. Sorry.
Okay.
I just the scoring is at a crazy pace and beating some really strong teams. I'm all in on this Vandy team. I think this is a tournament team and has the possibility to advance.
Real quick, that was at Battle for Atlantis that Vanderbilt won.
Thank you.
I said Atlantis. I didn't say Fort Myers.
But Stalika, beyond Vanderbilt, I mean, there's a lot of. Where do you want to go with this conference? Let me throw it out to you here. But I mean, do we maybe want to talk a little bit about the Florida Gators and whether or not they may not be for real this year?
Well, certainly the result against TCU on Thanksgiving Day was quite the surprise for the Gators. Also, a sign that it's definitely not going to be the strong start that they had last year. You also have to look at a team like Alabama, who was also in the Players Era Invitational over in Las Vegas. They had the loss against Gonzaga and managed to also beat UNLV and got a nice blowout win against Maryland. Of course, the only problem is because of their loss against Gonzaga, they were out of the running for the top four there.
Yeah, and then they really they didn't really help themselves, Joby, in terms of who they got to play in that event because ended up with I don't think Maryland's gonna be any good out of the Big Ten. That's not gonna
I
help them
haven't
any.
showed it. So.
Maryland has a 200 net, and unfortunately for Maryland, they're not 200 is getting to the point where even at this stage, it's tough to like get that thing into the top 100, which is what Alabama would need just to get a tier two win on a neutral surface against them. I still think Alabama is a strong team. This is a team that is a protected seed level team the way they've performed this year. They've gone out. This isn't the only week where you see Alabama playing big names, and they have performed very solidly for the most part. That 5-2 record is, then just peer your eyes over to that strength of schedule of 4, and that should tell you remember they took out St. John's very handily. They took Purdue, the other losses to Purdue, which is no shame. They're a good team. They're a tournament team. Not only that, they're going to be a protected seed at the end of the year.
Beating St. John's has also become a bit of a pastime. Their neighbors, Auburn, also managed to pull that off in the Players Era Invitational, along with the
Well,
win against Oregon.
it's
Yeah,
a typical
Griggs.
Patino team.
How
They
about, how
spent
about Illinois? The team we
Mhm.
all said was pretty good. That's a pretty. I'll hang on my hat on that win for Alabama. How about
Griggs, how about this Auburn team? Is it a team that we mentioned? We were almost ready to give up on them after that Bethune-Cookman overtime game to start the season, but here they are. They have the St. John's win, they have the Oregon win. They suddenly have a resume building.
Yeah, and one of their 2 losses was a very close game to a very good Houston team. No shame in that. Then Michigan blew them out. Michigan's been blowing everyone out. It's not that surprising that Auburn is getting better and playing better. I think that will continue. They've got a really, really big game coming up this week in that ACC SEC challenge against NC State. I think that that's big for both teams because while neither have been terrible and both have done some things to indicate that that there's potential there. They still need to, I think both of them have a bit of a sense of urgency in that game, wanting to get that win.
And don't forget their next game at Arizona after
Oh
Yeah.
that.
So Purdue, or I'm sorry, Auburn continuing to schedule hard. When you look at the conference as a whole, one of the things that they did last year under the direction was they sort of flooded the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. They always had showcases out of conference. Um, but this year, when you look at the results and you look at Missouri and you look at Kentucky and you look at Arkansas and Florida's got a couple of decent wins. They've beaten Florida State. The amount of teams that are top 40-ish, the wins just aren't there like they were last year. Like last year, they were just piling up an incredible resumes. This year, it's only a smattering of big wins, whereas last year it seemed like everybody had a few.
I think you're right, and I think we have not seen the non-conference performance we saw last year, which may mean
Which
we're
was
not going to
historic, to be fair.
we're not going to get 14 teams in this year.
We're not going to have a 6-12 Texas team. I mean, that not that they should have, but hey, at least Texas got a win this week that was decent.
We could talk about an undefeated Missouri team, but they do have the second easiest schedule in the entire nation of everybody out there. So I don't even think they're worth discussing at this point. But another undefeated team, Dorman. How about LSU? Very quietly 7-0.
Their schedule.
Yeah,
it's a little better than Missouri's. That's all I'm saying.
Tougher than Missouri's. I agree. They went down to Florida. They were in that Emerald Coast Classic there. They first beat Drake, who I think Drake's solid. Beat them, and then played DePaul. I'm not real high on DePaul, but you only play who's in front of you, so LSU played. But the way they played, and I was watching them there on TV over the weekend, the McMahon style seems to be a better fit lately. I think the team is starting to gel. I think there's things going on in the past that are gone with some bad players and bad attitude. I think LSU is a sneaky, middling SEC team this year.
Fair enough. Let's take a quick look at the upcoming schedule here in the conference.
Big week.
Griggs, what do you want to talk about? Because we got the ACC SEC challenge, so we can circle all these games here on Tuesday and Wednesday.
One of the ones that that North Carolina Kentucky game strikes me as being really important for Kentucky. So far, they've won nothing other than home bye games. While it's a home game, it's certainly not a bye game. It would certainly be their biggest one so far. This is more ACC than SEC. Wake, I think, is a good team that's come close to getting some big wins, but doesn't have a really big win yet. That's a hard road game for Oklahoma. And sort of a sneaky, I always point this out. I know some of these games that are sort of not in the spotlight, but you have a sense that might turn out to be really, really important later on in March when the committee's evaluating them. Miami and Ole Miss might turn out to be a really important game that everybody just sort of misses in the moment.
Another one,
Ole
Joby.
Miss did not have a good week last week.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joby, your Virginia at Texas game might be one of those also there.
Yeah, both these teams right now. Virginia, if you were to put out the field, Virginia's in the field right now, but not by a mile, and Texas is out, but not by a mile. So this could really very much have an impact. I also will point out, and we'll talk about them later, but A&M Pitt could fall in that category very easily since Pitt resuscitated themselves from the dead this year.
Yeah, Arkansas has Louisville coming to town. That's a big home game for them. The good news for Louisville fans, Kenny Payne will be at the game, but he'll be on Arkansas's bench.
Dorman, even beyond the challenge, that we've got some great games coming this weekend. Gonzaga, Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, Auburn, Arizona, Oklahoma, Arizona State, Ole Miss, St. John's, Missouri, Kansas, LSU, Texas Tech, A&M, SMU. I could just go on for hours here, I think.
They're all great. These showdowns with all the top programs and everything is phenomenal. And then you get, like you mentioned, we got the SEC playing their conference, against the ACC. It's just fantastic. It's great for the fans before you get after the holidays. You get there, start playing all conference games. I think the fans love it. I think it's great for the schools. I think it's great for the teams. You find out who you are. You find out where you're at right now because these are tough games, and your coach knows what's going on. It's phenomenal for the teams and the fans. I love it.
Yeah, the Kansas-Mizzou game on Sunday, I don't think it's
Border
quite
war.
as heated as it
I want to
was,
give you 3
but
seconds
it
on
is
that, Griggs. Go
still
ahead.
super. Well, it's not as heated as it was, but I still think it is super, super charged. I still think the bitterness in that rivalry is topped now only by BYU Utah. And I don't mean to say that it's the biggest in terms of importance, but oh my God, is that a bitter rivalry? It is so much fun.
Quick note, it does say Gonzaga at Kentucky on Friday. That game will be at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. That will not be in Lexington. Minor mistake there on the screen.
That's a good game too.
Neutral court game. Let's go over to, we're talking ACC, SEC, so let's go over to the other half there. Let's jump over to the ACC. Joby, you want to start us off, and do you want to talk about your Hoos, or you want to go somewhere else in this league?
Yeah, we'll be talking about Virginia next week because of the two, Texas and Dayton being two of the games coming up. And by the way, the Dayton game is in Charlotte at around midday when Virginia has another game later that night in football. So it's not just Indiana who pulls off the double. I'm sure Carla Williams was just saying, "Oh, we'll make the championship. We'll make the ACC championship in football." Sure. So I'll schedule a day game in Charlotte. But I think the story I want to go to, and hopefully I'm not stealing it, is SMU. SMU has now put together. Yeah, I know their schedule's only in the 300s, but that net doesn't lie to agree on the efficiency side. SMU is actually putting together a resume, a potential resume that could talk about the tournament later because the conference itself doesn't have the just unlimited amount of net poison that you often do see. It's not just who they've beaten. They've beaten, though Butler's a decent team. They beat Virginia.
Butler is good. Yeah.
But yeah, and Mississippi State at Mississippi State in Starkville. I know Mississippi State has struggled this year, but in Starkville is a different animal. Murray State, good win, good solid under the radar school. So I think SMU has put together not what will wow the committee, but just has looked in my eyes to be a tournament level team.
The next 3 games are huge for them. We'll really see what they're made of.
Yes. They need to win. Well, if they're going to, I think they need to beat. You lose at Vandy, no one's going to say anything about that. But they need to beat LSU for sure, and then at least have a really good game against A&M, who I still think is also on the border of the tournament. But that could be that, hey, are you in the tournament or not? Because A&M, SMU are two teams that could be fighting for a spot.
Yeah, Joby, I know it's coming up. Well, no, it is this week. I don't think they're going to win at Vanderbilt. I just think that Vanderbilt's really good.
They're great, yeah.
I do think Texas A&M has gotten a little bit better in the last week or two than when they started. But I still think SMU, eye test and however you want to measure it, has looked better than A&M all the way through. I am almost, not to further your point to the point to where I disagree with you, SMU should win that game.
Yeah.
Dorman, how about talking a little NC State here?
Yeah.
Not a good week. Only winning 1 out of 3 games out in Maui.
Yeah, when I saw the Maui bracket, I said, you know what, this is the Wolfpacks to win. I really thought they would go out there and put on a show, put on a clinic, and it was anything but. The opener, Seton Hall, they got run off the court. Seton Hall looked like Phi-Slat Majama out there. I thought the wrong teams were in the wrong uniforms. I really did. It's exactly opposite of what I thought was going to go on. It was stunning to me. It was crazy.
I'm with you on that.
And then you think they'd come back and fire back up against Texas, and they lose to Miller and Texas. So their travel trip to Maui on the court not very successful. Maybe my idea of preseason were way too high on the Wolfpack because of the new coach, and they were bringing in all these solid players that were going to be a great team together, and it hasn't come. Maybe it just hasn't come together yet. But I don't know. I'm not really that high on this NC State team like I was 2 weeks ago.
You look up in the stats here, and you can see the answer. Their offense has been fine. The defense has been pathetic. That's the problem. You can't win without defense, I don't think.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Stalika, I get not that sure where else we want to really focus in on this conference, but I think we should at least discuss Duke. They had the nice win over Arkansas. They are sitting here now in fourth in the nation.
Well, this is going to be a team that's probably going to be hanging around the top five, and now they're probably looking closer to a lock to potentially beating Florida in the upcoming ACC SEC Challenge.
All right. I guess the only two we could briefly mention is Georgia Tech. They're looking pathetically bad, Joby.
Well, I will be, you know what? The difference between this year's ACC and last year's ACC, Georgia Tech is the only team when you look at the nets that has a 2, and then BC is about where they were last year in the 160s, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, last year, half the conference had triple digits in the net at this stage. And then the other ones who didn't were like in the 70s and above. That's not what's happening this year. This year, you're actually going to be able to go on the road. If you went in the road at Wake Forest, that's a quad 1 win. And I don't think people would disagree that that's a quad 1 win, given how Wake's played this year. That was not necessarily anticipated. Georgia Tech, though, still stays.
You know what, Griggs? How about their 2 former Pac-12 schools here? Good week for both of them.
Yeah,
Cal
really.
win over UCLA, Stanford's winning their event, beating Minnesota and St. Louis.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought them up because it's kind of easy to forget about them. But both of them really, really good weeks, really good. I was really impressed with Cal's win at UCLA. And not just that they won, but that they looked good doing it. And I'm trying to remember when the last time Cal looked good doing anything. It has happened. We've had some good Cal teams. We've had some good Stanford teams. But I think that that's maybe one of the storylines of the conference is just how much better those teams are than what they've been in recent years, and how much better than they are than at least what I was expecting so far. Because yeah, their schedules have been a little bit of a pastry cart, but they've both lifted some heavy weights. You mentioned the win against St. Louis. That is a really good win.
I forget the year within the past decade, but Cal did actually go unbeaten at home, got a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament, lost to Hawaii, and they've never been heard from again.
Pretty much.
Jason Kidd was playing then.
Yeah.
Well, Jalen Brown was that team with Rowe, and that was actually a pretty good team. Brown goes pro, and nobody's there to replace him.
I think I also got to throw the head scratcher team of the season out there, Joby. These Pitt Panthers, home loss to Quinnipiac, followed by a win over Ohio State on a buzzer beater for the second straight year. By the way,
I can't figure them out. I mean, that's why I was putting in on that A&M. Hell, they go out and they beat A&M, and then they start to all's forgiven to a degree. It's like, yeah. I mean, I cannot. Jeff Capel makes his life so difficult every year.
This is an important week, I think, for
ACC SEC challenge. There it is again. Yep.
Because, well, for the SEC too, because a lot of teams, a lot of these teams need to start building up their profiles, and this is just a really good chance to do it. Not to just hijack that. I think that Georgia Florida State games were. I mean, I know we talked about these a few seconds ago.
I'm actually highlighting some of these non-conference games coming up this week too that are all really important here. So, including Louisville, Indiana, where we discussed Duke, Michigan State. But Games like
God, would it
That
just
Virginia Dayton game on Saturday is very interesting.
it's
Yes.
real interesting. I thought we'd talk more about that when we get to date, but yeah, that's real interesting.
Neutral site. So we'll see. This is a big week for Virginia in a lot of ways. Not that they have unsurmountable tasks, but they're playing teams that they probably should beat, but away from home. And they kind of were lackluster, beat a decent Northwestern team, lost to a decent Butler team. And then besides that, they've had a lot of cupcakes at home. We're going to see away from home, see how they do.
Let's jump over to the Big East Conference here. Stalika, this is your conference. Uh, do you want to talk a little about your Musketeers who've been bouncing back a little bit, or do you want to go somewhere else?
I think we have to talk about Seton Hall because this is the team that's literally come out of nowhere. I mean,
Nowhere.
we had, I think, almost unanimously Seton Hall pegged to finish in the cellar of the Big East right here. And what do? They go out to Maui. They get a surprise win against NC State. Had a very close loss against USC that they could have easily won.
Yeah.
And I believe they also did get a third win out in Mount, against Washington State.
Yeah, but I guess though my thought on Seton Hall is, they're still sitting here with a horrible non-conference strength of schedule. They've played two quality opponents, but I'm not ready to buy into the Hall yet. I think it may have been more of just that NC State just wasn't ready for that game.
We'll see what they do against K-State in about a week, but as we're about to get to, K-State's about to have a major bedwetting at home.
They already have.
Yeah, it's why I've been holding off on the Big 12. We'll get to K-State
is
in a minute.
not technically over, but the bed is freaking soaked.
Dorman, we were
Yeah.
all in on this Georgetown team, and what a horrible week for them, quite honestly.
Yes, I
Oh.
was all on board. But you want when they were playing Miami the other day in Florida. They were in the Orlando ESP events, and they got a tough loss to Dayton. The next day they were there in Miami, and they were a total no-show. And when I see a team that's a total no-show early in the year, when like even down 20, no emotion, just running around, and I hope Cooley gets his kids and gets them in the right frame of mind, because that was a bad week for Georgetown, and they have talent. I know they're a little banged up, and they're going to get a big guy on the front line back. That will obviously help, but they got to get that attitude like we belong and we deserve it, and we need to start. They need to start winning, and they better turn it on soon, because they need wins, and they need to start piling them up now.
And Joby, UConn bounces back from the one loss where they were shorthanded and takes care of a really good Illinois team.
UConn's the story of this conference. It looks a lot like Duke last year in the ACC, because this conference, when you look at their nets, is the ACC circa 24, 25. I mean, look at those triple digits, covering over half the conference. And then you have your one shiny object, Connecticut, aka Duke from last year, for the ACC. This conference as a whole, Connecticut is a good team. I'm actually glad they're getting their wins now, because they just won't have the opportunity to have just a ton. I think St. John's will continue to perform well. We'll see about Butler. Butler's so far so good.
I kind of like them.
But, Butler's got senior leadership, so that helps them. But Connecticut needs to take care of business now, and luckily for them, they are smart on how they schedule. Hurley did a really good job of compiling the schedule, and they have those opportunities.
Yeah,
I do want to highlight one thing about Butler here as we're looking at their
okay. I
profiles.
wanted to ask about them. Go ahead, Slika.
I was going to say, it does show as a blowout win, but they were actually trailing by 3 points at home against Wright State in the half. So whatever Thad Matta said, they ended up outscoring Wright State 65-37 in the second half. So the game going to look a lot prettier than what it really was for a good chunk of the game.
Yeah, and I guess just St. John's, Griggs, they did lose twice. to
Yeah.
Iowa State and Auburn. They did beat Baylor though in that Vegas event. I'm not writing them off by any means, even though they picked up two
No,
losses this week.
and they had lost. They took a few lumps in November last year too. This is just what Patino teams typically do. We've seen it all throughout his career. If you pull them up here, Chad, and what I really want to look on is their upcoming schedule. I think it's you have a lot what are largely winnable games. That game against Kentucky is really interesting for a lot of reasons, but it's normally around Christmas when uh Rick Pitino teams kick it into a higher gear. So I think that right around there, you're going to start to see elevated play. I think that all of the expectations that we had for them in the preseason are still within their reach. That's a lot of words and a lot of sentences to say what you basically said in a few,
So
which
pull
is this
that
is still a really
schedule
good
up,
team.
Chad. What do
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. What do Iona, Kentucky, and Providence all have in
Jeez.
Hmm.
It's the Rick Pitino Invitational Tournament. That's coming the
Yeah.
MTE next year. Here's the upcoming schedule. Huge game tomorrow night. UConn is going to Lawrence Fieldhouse to take on Kansas. And huge game on Friday, Salika. I know
Mhm.
you're a big fan of that one there. It's Cincinnati Xavier. Uh,
Certainly feeling a lot better about this matchup than I was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we'll
Yeah.
get into that in the Big 12 as well.
Cincinnati has not looked good.
a couple other big ones here. Ole Miss St. John's, Marquette, Wisconsin, Rhody Providence. That's a big rivalry game there. Georgetown's at Carolina. Creighton's at Nebraska. Uh, Villanova
Patrick
by
Ewing's not walking through that door.
Villanova, by the way, on Saturday we'll be playing Penn in the championship of the Big Five Classic with their win tonight over Temple.
I would
Uh,
also say Mick Cronin's not walking to that door, but he never won at the Cintas Center either.
mhm. Big 12 time, and why don't we start? Well, Dorman, let's start with your Arizona team here because they're just cruising along here at 7-0 and number two in the nation in the AP poll.
Yeah, they had a low week. They were played at Denver and Norfolk State. Cruised to victory in both of them. But they're getting back after it this week. Auburn is coming to Tucson on Saturday night, so that'll be great. First big game at McKale for Arizona this year. Um, what can I say? They've looked great so far. Shooting is the one issue I worry about them. They don't have that pure great shooter when guys go to the basket and open up, take to the lane and dish. That's my one concern. But I love I think they're much tougher than we've been in the past, and it shows on the rebounds. We went to Connecticut, and Arizona was like plus 20 something on the board. So that just shows toughness. I like everything that's going on. And this week will be a big test for Arizona. Auburn is a real good team. Can they slow down Pettiford?
Uh, Joby, Iowa State went 3-0 out there in Vegas, but didn't even make the championship round because of the way the tiebreakers work. They only beat St. John's by one, so they ended up with Syracuse as their third game, which I think they would have liked to play somebody a little better than that. But
Yeah.
they did go 3-0 out there, which is important.
They're great. I mean, they're a great team. They're a protected seed level team.
Yeah, they are.
They are what they've been the last few years. I mean, are you surprised of what you've seen about Iowa State? No, no, because this is what they do. I wish for their sake that they had been able to play someone better than Syracuse. Syracuse isn't just god awful, but when you're playing a tournament like that, you want to play that, you want to play. If you're going to pick a team out of the ACC, wouldn't you rather have NC State on your resume than Syracuse as a win?
And
Yeah.
there's nothing on the selection committee report that's going to say, oh, you're third place, you're the champion, or you're fifth
Right.
place.
Exactly. Exactly. And I don't love Creighton long term. Yeah,
I don't think I like them short term.
exactly. So, well, they got that nice win, but but yeah, I would have much rather had some stronger games. But St. John's 1 point, 10 points, 21 points doesn't matter. That is going to be a great quad. It's a quad one win right now. a high quad one. St. John's is 4-3, but their net's 23 for a reason. And that's because St. John's is good. Iowa State will continue to do what they have. They will continue to be top 10 in net ranking, whatever. The J&G has them as a 3 seed. That could turn to a 2, that could turn to a 4, but it spells protected seed.
Yeah, kind of like the same thing with Houston. They end up getting Notre Dame for their third game. Uh, and, you know, and honestly, they beat Syracuse and Notre Dame, which don't move the needle. And their loss was a 3-point loss to Tennessee, but they're a great team still.
And that's the problem, though, because they did have the loss against Houston. They ended up getting kind of a middling opponent against the Irish. So we didn't really learn a whole lot about Houston other than that. Maybe they still haven't completely found their stride either, because let's not forget they did get a nice road win in Birmingham against well, technically a neutral, but may as well have been a
Yeah.
road win against Auburn. But even then, they're still haven't fired on all cylinders yet.
Yeah, pull Houston up, Chad. Because while they didn't get the opportunities that they wanted to in the Players Era event, like they're well, never
And
mind.
and Syracuse took them to overtime, but had a shot to win the game at the end of regulation.
Yeah, I thought their schedule was a little rougher than that. They do play Arkansas before getting in the conference play, but that's really about it. So
But Houston being Houston, at least they made sure Syracuse couldn't get a shot off at the end of
yeah,
regulation.
Uh, Joby, I think the team that I learned the most about was Kansas, and I'm a believer now. And I get it, no
Yeah.
Dame and Syracuse not that much, but beating
I,
Tennessee, that
yeah.
was the game for
and
me.
coming from behind to do it.
Yeah,
Without Peterson.
Kansas, we've seen Kansas a few times this year play ACC teams. They might as well be an honorary member at this rate. I mean, that's 4 of them. But Kansas, Kansas is definitely a. I mean, they're not the Kansas of old. They're not going to be competing for a 1 seed. Okay, let's get that out of our minds. But after Carolina just disemboweled them in Chapel Hill, a lot of us were thinking, "Oh, all right, Carolina looks good." But is it because Kansas isn't Kansas? No, Kansas is still a good team. Give Carolina credit for that win. And so Kansas, I think, is going to make, I don't know if they're going to win that Big 12 regular season championship that they seem to own for the last decade, but they are going to be competitive within the conference. In this conference, if you can show competitive with your Houstons, with your Iowa States, et cetera, if you can pick off those wins, then you're going to find yourself once again competing for really good seeding in the NCAA tournament, and Kansas is certainly capable of that.
Yeah,
Oh, by the
and
way, Peterson, freaking stud. Love that guy. He can just light up. That's a potential Big 12 player of the year.
yeah. This is as soon as he gets back, that changes. I mean, the fact that that they went 3-0 on Vegas without him, though, is
Yes,
it's just
exactly
huge
right.
for me.
Has anyone heard if he's going to be able to play tomorrow night?
I
Yeah,
heard some
it's
talk
been
about a
quiet.
potential. It's been kind of
Yeah.
quiet. I haven't heard a final answer one way or the other yet. I'll see if I can get one there. But Dorman, while I look see if I get anything more information, I want to talk a little TCU here. They had a bit of
Yeah.
a nice bounce back week with the sweep of Florida and Wisconsin.
Incredible. They were in one of the 24 Acrisure tournaments this weekend out
20,
west.
26, I think.
20, okay. They took on Florida and Wisconsin, and to be honest, neither game was even really that close. They, like someone mentioned earlier, maybe Florida isn't Florida, and that could possibly be the case. But TCU played really, really well out there. And then against a balanced Wisconsin team, where they're really going to defend you and make you try and do things to your offense that you don't want to do. And they didn't get bothered by it. They got in their offense. They ran their sets. I was impressed with TCU maybe as much as anyone, maybe not Michigan this weekend, to go there and beat Florida. And then it's easy to lose your concentration when you got to come back and play another game after you think you just beat the defending national champs, and they took Wisconsin to the woodshed. So Jamie Dixon's Horned Frogs off to a great start. I think, and
a great recovery.
Yeah.
yes, after a rough,
Their
they didn't look
start
good
didn't
against
exactly
Michigan.
go that well.
Well,
No.
it was though, and they struggled against the New Orleans team that's I think's a little bit better than some of us thought, not all of us. Rocco was big on them, but you look at their profile and pull it up, Chad, since we're talking about them. And it's just they beat Florida, they beat Wisconsin. Suddenly you're looking at this and you're like, well, damn, like they almost beat Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
I
do
believe
want
that.
to make one correction, though. This
Thank
was
you.
actually at the Rady Children's Invitational in San Diego. I think
Yeah.
it was UC San Diego's arena
Yeah,
where they
Oh,
played the
yeah.
games.
that was an honorary Acrisure event
Oh,
because it wasn't
honorary.
quite in the same building. It was a little distance away in San Diego
Well,
instead of
I
out
mean, they have what is it,
LA.
29 Acrisure tournaments. It's kind of hard to keep them all straight.
Real quick note: as of today, Bill Self is calling Darren Peterson as questionable for tomorrow night's game against UConn. Uh,
You can say that about anyone.
he may potentially play as a statement, which I would say absolutely because you want to make UConn prep for him, and especially if he's not going to play, let them waste their time
Yeah.
prepping for him. Real quick here, Kansas State, Griggs, team going in the wrong direction, loses to Indiana, and there it is at the bottom. Just lost at home to Bowling Green tonight as we're recording this show.
Yeah, and if you pull them up, they just
Why?
haven't. Good point. We'll make this very quick. At no point have they really looked that good. The win against Tulsa, they had to really. We'll talk about Tulsa very briefly here in a second. They kind of had to pull that out. Kind of got lucky. They just haven't looked good.
All right, let's take a quick look at the upcoming schedule here in the conference. I think I should note here real quick. Another team we did not discuss was BYU. Also a good week with wins over Miami and Dayton.
Yeah.
Actually looking really good here. We could talk about them in the upcoming schedule as well.
Chad, we're forgetting one other bedwetting in the Big 12 this week. Did you not see what Cincinnati did last week against Eastern Michigan?
Oh my Lord!
That might have been Eastern's biggest win in 30 years since Earl Boykins was on campus.
Earl Boykins.
Here we go. 64-56. They lose to Eastern Michigan. Yeah, the Big 12 has had a few,
How in the
like I said,
world did they
bedwettings
beat
this week.
Yeah.
Big games
Jordan.
this week. Auburn, Arizona, Cincinnati, Xavier, UConn, Kansas, Iowa State at Purdue. Huge one on Saturday.
That's a real big one.
Baylor's going to Memphis. Where else are we going? We've got the Kansas, Missouri, Texas Tech, LSU, TCU, North. I don't know why I circled that one. Mississippi Valley, Kansas State. Kansas State could be in trouble there.
Yeah. Mississippi Valley. If Mississippi Valley wins that, we're having those guys on the show.
Over in the West Coast Conference, I guess. Let me start off, Griggs, here. The story of the week was maybe Gonzaga. Nice win over Alabama. We know they got blasted by
Real
Michigan, but they dominated Maryland. 2-1 ain't bad in that event.
It really isn't. The Michigan game was more surprising than it was disappointing, I guess, if that makes any sense at all. I was more impressed with Michigan than disappointed in Gonzaga, especially when you consider how well they had played going into that game. I still think that they're the class of the conference. Anything else on Gonzaga? Because digging into this, St. Mary's, while 8-1, still not looking as good as I thought. Santa Clara, okay,
They're
yeah, if you want to.
good.
St. Mary's only loss was that Vanderbilt game. Santa Clara, that 1-point loss to St. Louis on Thursday. They did bounce back with the win over Minnesota, Joby, but
Yeah.
I'm still buying Santa Clara for now.
Yeah, I really like Santa Clara. I think that they're a lot better than I thought that they would be. And St. Mary's could still get there. The only loss being the Vanderbilt. It's just that I guess I was expecting them to blow through some of the teams that they've played. One of the disappointments so far has really been San Francisco.
Yeah. No.
A loss to a Colorado team that I don't think is very good. They're losing at home to California Baptist as we record this. That Colorado team.
Yeah.
Here's a real oddity here. I did not expect the Seattle Seahawks, the Red Hawks, to be better than San Francisco here.
Yeah, San Fran, in kind of running out of strikes.
Yeah, let's keep things moving here though, because there's not much else to discuss at this conference. So other than the upcoming games, we've got the Zags at Kentucky. That's the big one there. St. Mary's is going to be at Davidson, a cross-country trip there, while Santa Clara.
Yeah.
at New Mexico on Saturday, maybe a
That's a
game.
tough game.
That's a
Well, no,
good
it's
game.
not. Yeah, it's a good game. When they should
Uh,
win. What am I thinking? New Mexico's a
Before we
good
jump to
game.
the American, we mentioned that St. Louis team. Dorman, let's jump over to the A10 here,
Oh, yes.
because
Lots to talk about
because
there.
is it time to maybe start talking about the St. Louis team with that Santa Clara win?
I think so. I think they're the strongest team in the A10 this year. In the A10, I know been down a little in the past, but I think the A10 is stronger than they have been, with the exception of Loyola of Illinois.
Ooh,
Uh,
we don't
uh,
need to discuss them.
no, we don't. Josh Schertz does a tremendous job wherever he goes, and I think he has the right guys in place. He has some really talented pieces, and he's got a shooter that's lights out. I'm really high on the St. Louis Billiken team. I know VCU is going to be in the mix, and George Mason is playing nice ball, but St. Louis, for my money, is where I'd be going right now for the A10.
Yeah, and I think the other story though, Joby, the Bonnies are also getting my attention
Ooh,
here.
Yeah.
They were in that Carolina game. They didn't
Yeah.
win it, but nice win yesterday at Florida Atlantic actually.
Yeah,
Uh,
poor Florida Atlantic is just getting drilled by every A10 team they walk up against. You know what I mean? But the Bonnies have looked solid. I mean, the problem that the A10 generally has is look at that strength of schedule. Except for VCU, none of them have played anybody. I mean, it's just
yeah.
kind of awful. And but to their credit, notice, and yeah, I've done this a few times, they have more teams in the top 100 than they do not. And that is different.
I
That is better than the Big East in terms of a break point,
well,
so they're going to be able to pick up in the conference some reasonable wins. If you see a team, a Mason, a St. Bonaventure, as we were just going into, a St. Louis, if the Billikens, if Dayton, who has actually played, I'm surprised their
yeah.
schedule's not stronger. If you see those teams put up a gaudy record, 14 and 4, 15 and 3, it actually might mean something. It actually might allow an at-large bid, depending on what the rest of the field does.
Yeah.
It's
Joby,
not for lack of effort on Dayton's trying to schedule. I mean, teams like Cincinnati, Marquette, not as good as has been expected so
Right,
far. So
and,
that's
and
part of
Dayton
the
will get
problem.
Dayton will get Virginia on a neutral court this week, so that's good. That's a good opportunity for them.
yeah, Dayton did a good job with their schedule, I think. But I mean, to look at some of those, and I know it's early, but that's just kind of disappointing for a conference that needs to schedule up. And I realize that it feels like more and more that I guess this outside of the Big East, it feels like the A10 in particular, but the Mountain West, the West Coast minus maybe Gonzaga, they're almost purposely or not being systematically cut out of the opportunities. But to see a team as good as George Mason, and they are good, go out and
Mhm.
play the 340th strength schedule out of conference. And I don't what can be done? I know this is more Rocco's territory and he's not here tonight, but like why was Dayton able to get those games? Why was St. Louis able to get those
Uh,
games and
Dayton's
Mason couldn't? I mean,
Dayton's games, for the most part, aren't even by games. Oh, I'll do a one and done at the other place. They
yeah,
put an inordinate amount of neutral games to
yeah,
them, and so what they've done is they find attractive neutral games. I'll use this weekend as an example. Charlotte is an attractive location for Virginia alumni. It's not like it'll be just all Virginia fans, but it's an attractive, a number of alumni are there. It's not an awful trip for Dayton. Hey, easier than doing a one and one with Virginia. Let's go to Charlotte, and
yeah.
both teams wind up in that. It's a benefit for both teams in that case.
Yeah, and VCU, another good team that had an atrocious schedule this last year, much better on the schedule this year. There's only one thing that VCU did wrong, and it's they didn't win any of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, VC,
How did they
they
get
came
that?
close against Utah State. So,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. They did.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. There's some of the key upcoming games this week. St. Louis at Loyola Marymount tomorrow night.
That's a good one.
And of
That is
course,
a sneaky good. LMU going to win a lot of games this year and a lot of games at home. St. Louis goes there and wins. They deserve credit for that.
George Mason, a big one at Virginia Tech, that they are better than Vodtech, but you've got to win that game if you want to be on the at-large board. I think Vodtech is not good this year. And that we talked about the State and Virginia game a couple times already.
Yeah.
Let's jump over the American.
This
According to
won't take long.
there it is. There's what happened. Memphis, who was the team we all talked about heading into the season, well, they beat Southern Illinois, so they finally got a win. Uh, I guess Tulsa is the story here,
Tulsa
though. Dormant,
is the story.
or
Tulsa's
Griggs,
the
if you want to
story.
discuss that, somebody wants to discuss Tulsa. Go ahead. Anybody.
Yeah. Well, like they're 6-1. The one loss was by 1 point or 2 points. It came down to the last possession.
1 point at K.
Yeah,
1 point at K-State, who's
at
not
K-State.
that good. That might be a
Yeah.
quad 3 loss by the end of the season.
And you look at this profile, and nothing really jumps out at you on the face. But I think Rhodey is pretty decent. I know we just talked about them in the A10. They had the win at Yale. It's not easy to win at Yale, so I think that win's worth something. And I think Northern Iowa is a win that I was actually kind of impressed by that. So, these are teams that I think both Rhodey and Northern Iowa are better than their brand names. And this is this is not a protected seed profile. I do think that they've shown that they can at least make a run at the bubble. And in my defense, who the hell else are we going to talk about in this league?
It's a shame. We may be talking about this league on Wednesdays by the end of the season. At this point, upcoming schedule in the conference, though. Let's focus in on the Tulsa game, and Missouri State on Saturdays are only D1 game.
What the hell is Manhattan Christian?
Exactly.
Tulane
Utah
beating
State-
Akron would help them.
Utah State at South Florida on Thursday, maybe Baylor at Memphis on Saturday. A couple games maybe worth scheduling. North Texas TCU as well.
That might be the best game, that North Texas TCU. What garbage.
One
You're
more
not looking
conference.
forward to Mount Marty and Wichita State? I'm very disappointed, Griggs.
Hot garbage this league.
One more conference, Joby. I know you want to talk
Garbage.
about that in the Mountain West.
Did someone say
Joby,
garbage?
the Mountain West isn't good, but it is not as bad as the American. Come
Okay.
on.
Let's start with a couple of things here. Dorman, why don't we start with San Diego State, who did pick up the win over Oregon and going 1-2 out in Vegas.
Yeah, but I think it was pretty disappointing for San Diego State out west this week in Las Vegas. They don't look at up front as athletic and as timid and intimidating as they usually do. They're usually lockdown defenders, and that's Coach Dirch's way. And I just didn't see it. I don't see those great wing athletes playing all that perimeter, great defense, so they can't. The opposition can't throw the ball down low. I was given a lot of. I heard a lot of this preseason hype that San Diego State was far and away the best team in this league, but
They're not.
I don't think so. When I look at Utah State, I see a really good team there, and there are a few others that might be better than San Diego State. So the Aztecs need to get it going and turn it on. Maybe they're having a rough start here, but not what I thought they were going to look like to start the season.
Joby, can you at least give some love to Utah State, or do you say, "Hey, you need overtime to beat Montana State"?
I think is a solid win, especially since it was on a neutral site. Utah State is a tournament team. They're the only ones that are a tournament team.
I want to talk about one more that might be a bit of a dark horse.
And I'm not just saying this I've said this. I qualify it every time. I'm not saying it just for shtick. This is if Utah State wins that tournament, this is a one bid league, and I'm not saying it for effect. That is the truth. It is a one bid league if Utah State wins the conference tournament.
Wyoming looked good yesterday.
Yeah, that's. Let's look at Wyoming real quick. They looked good enough yesterday to where we should at least mention them. Now that is a lousy profile. That's a lousy schedule.
And Griggs, they lost the game though. They may have looked good, but they lost the game.
They did. But here's the question, and it echoes something that Joby was saying about the A10. And if they bloat their record out against that, what is not a strong out of conference schedule at all, could they make a run at the bubble? Because I think they're going to beat Dartmouth. I think they're going to beat the Utes. I think they're going to beat South Dakota State. And there's not many games in conference where they're not going to be favored.
They need to beat Utah State when Utah State visits, no matter what. Like they will have to have that win because they're not going to have in the conference the opportunity for quad one wins. They just, I mean, maybe Colorado State sneaks into the top 75, and thus when you go, when you go on Valentine's Day there, you might be able to pull off one. But you know what? If Wyoming wins that game, Colorado State's probably out of the top 75. So it's like they're in trouble.
Colorado State's not very good.
And remember, all these teams are making some overinflated numbers too when they play Boise State because the net does not factor in that loss to Hawaii Pacific. And let me just pull this down here for a second because we got to remember that. Don't let the committee forget what happened. But Boise State played Hawaii Pacific. That's all I got to say.
Amazing.
That is beautiful.
Thank you,
great.
Hawaii
Pacific. Did you just blow your final point? I mean,
I won't throw it out there again. Let's take a quick look at the upcoming schedule in the Mountain West. Not that there's much here, but Utah State.
He also blew
South
the entire
Florida.
Hoops HD budget with that shirt.
I might have also.
If Hawaii Pacific wants to send me a little hat, I'll wear it.
Utah State at South Florida at Charlotte. So a little East Coast trip here for Utah State. Those are probably the most important games of the week. I don't know what else to circle here.
Chad, we have a Front Range game on Saturday. The signature Front Range game between two awful Front Range teams.
I think actually Colorado State Wyoming is probably a bigger rivalry than that even, but that ain't a bad one. Boise State at Butler on Saturday too. The Lopes against Oklahoma State. Maybe circle that.
The Commander-in-Chief's game with Air Force and Navy.
Oklahoma State's good. If Grand Canyon could somehow pull that one off, that would be the best win by this conference this year.
Okay. But on that note, that finishes all our conference. So let's run through some final thoughts here. And Salika, let me start with you tonight.
I know Joby's not a fan of the Mountain West, but we pretty much have a de facto Mountain West team in the Big East. And of course, I'm talking about the Xavier Musketeers. I mean, two of their best players right now, Filip Borovichinin and Jovan Milicevic, they were the two guys that transferred from New Mexico out to Victory Parkway this year. And you've also got Roddy Anderson III, who, by the way, the only holdover from last year, now a backup guard who came via Boise State. And you also got Papa Njai, who gives a little bit of size off the bench, although he's going to play sparingly. I mean, between Xavier and Cincinnati, I can't recall the last time both teams have had triple-digit nets or RPIs or whatever metric you want to use, but that's not going to make this game any less dangerous or passionate come Friday night.
Good point there. Dorman.
Yeah, I think the Big East is in real trouble. I don't think this is just a slow start. They went 9-11 over Feast Week, and they just don't seem to be that strong of a conference this year. I was comparing them to, like someone said, the ACC of a couple of years ago. They just don't have depth. We'll see what Butler brings, but after UConn and St. John's, I'm really concerned about the rest of the conference. I could realistically see only two teams going to the tournament from this conference. I really can. We'll see what Marquette, Creighton, and Providence, who I thought coming into the season looked pretty good on paper, but just don't look good on the court. Shaka just can't get it going this year right now. We'll see how it goes, but I think the Big East is on alert.
Yep, I agree with that too. Joby.
Well, the net came, as we've talked about throughout the show, the net came out today. And the most interesting component that I've seen, you heard me start off by saying, is actually the under the radar leaders. It is remarkable how many. So the J&G is my example. Before the net came out, the J&G had a normal 46 teams inside the quote unquote bubble. Because of the number of teams from under the radar conferences, that includes UTulsa, and Utah State for that matter, that propelled themselves forward due to high nets that then correlated into who they beat in the net, etc. 51 teams inside the bubble right now, inside the cutoff point. And that includes, now I'm going to read off nets, which aren't ranking tools, but it gives you an idea of what these teams have done against and how their competition's viewed. McNeese inside the bubble, net of 29.
Not now.
Yeah.
They just lost to the
Nice.
Carter Works tonight as we
All right,
recorded the show.
Cal Baptist, 61. Mason, 43. Tulsa, 27. Yale, 25.
Yale's good.
Belmont, 35. Utah State, which we've already discussed, 22. And UC San Diego, 41. All of those are top 50 inside the 48, the magic 48 area where often cutoff happens. Now, the one thing that will happen as the year goes on is because the rest of their conferences, be honest, Tulsa and Utah State, we've seen what their conferences look like. They won't be getting the quality wins. The nets will start to drag, and we probably will wind up back to around where the cutoffs around 46, 47. But it is interesting that as of this moment, a lot of these one bid leagues have a standard bearer that who knows could find their way inside the bubble if they make a ridiculous run within their conference.
Yeah, California Baptist might be picking up a signature win
Beating
as we record
Colorado
this.
tonight.
So.
Wow.
They've led the whole way, but it's really, really close now.
Okay. Griggs, you're on Fish Off the Show.
Yeah. So I'm not a particularly spiritual person. I don't ask God for much, but I would like to point out, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, that we are just one John Calipari ejection away from Kenny Payne being a head coach again. And with Louisville coming to town on Wednesday, oh my God, how awesome would it be for that to happen against Louisville? And then to make it even more awesome, what if that happens and Arkansas wins the game? Guys, I might not stop laughing for weeks. You're going to need to check on me.
I got bad news for you,
Wednesday.
Griggs. We're not going to see a Calipari ejection until he plays a middling SEC team. I'm afraid Louisville's not going to fit the bill.
But it could. He could absolutely lose it. And then Kenny Payne is coaching against Louisville.
On that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We'll be back in Wednesday night with Under the Radar next Monday with another Hoops HD report. But on behalf of David Dorman, David Griggs, Joby Fortson, John Stalika, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Hawaii Pacific.
Yes,
remember that name. And if NCAA Selection Committee, if it's not on your team sheets, just look at our videos. You'll see the shirt throughout the season. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll talk to you again real soon.